The Archdiocese of Oklahoma City is one step closer to making the St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual Charter School a reality after a state board voted last week 3-2 to approve the contract to create what would be the first of its kind. It's in the United States. But legal challenges have been filed by groups who say using public funds for a private school violates the separation of church and state. Moderator Cassidy Mudd discusses those issues in this week's in-depth conversation.
Thanks, Taylor. We invited representatives from the Archdiocese to join us, but citing pending litigation, they told us they were unable to do so. So joining us today, Aaron Brewer, who is the Vice President for the Oklahoma Parents Legislative Action Committee, and education reporter Jennifer Palmer with our content partners at the Oklahoma Watch. Let's begin with that pending litigation. Jennifer, who has filed suit and who will ultimately decide if this school becomes a reality?
That's right. There's one lawsuit about over the school trying to halt the start of it. And that is from the Oklahoma Parents Legislative Council and a group of other parents, taxpayers, some other folks who believe that this shouldn't be publicly funded, basically.
Aaron, 2 board members voted no to the contract approval. Your organization agrees with this. Can you explain a little bit why?
Why they voted no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what they've said on public record, those 2 board members who voted no, was that they believe it is illegal and unconstitutional for the state to fund this school, and we agree with that.
Jennifer, 3 board members voted yes. What was their reasoning for doing so?
I mean, they believe that, this denying the school to the Archdiocese would infringe upon their religious liberties is basically the argument there. There's not a consensus on that at all. Obviously, a lot of these votes have been split, with 3-2, so they are not in agreement.
Aaron, what concerns you about the possible curriculum at St. Isidore?
So the major thing is that it just flies in the face of Oklahoma law. So children in Oklahoma, according to our Constitution, are guaranteed a public education that is free from discrimination and sectarian influence. But in this school's application, they openly say that they may very well discriminate against students based on religious beliefs. And so that's opposed to what our Constitution provides our kids.
Does this set a precedence for other religious organizations to start schools?
I believe it does. If you open the door for a single faith to begin operating schools funded by taxpayers, then you've got to allow all religious entities to do the same.
Aaron, will students of all backgrounds, such as different religious backgrounds or sexual and gender orientations, be allowed in the school? And what will be done for those students who don't adhere to the Catholic faith?
So that is a major question. And in the school's application, they have basically reserved the right to potentially discriminate against students who may not align with the religious views that they're teaching at the school. So that's very concerning because public schools are intended to be open and accessible to all students.
Jennifer, did you want to follow?
Yeah, could I add to that? I know I did review the application and as well as the contract, which is what they're negotiating right now. They did add a provision that says that they will not discriminate in enrollment on a number of bases, including religion and other things. But that still leaves a little bit of wiggle room. We know from covering private schools especially, which is what they're used to operating, that there could also be, suspensions, expulsions, things like that, where, say a student got pregnant that, would not align with their faith, and that could be reason for expulsion. So even if they say they will not discriminate in enrollment, I think there's still some issues to be, considered.
Going off of that, will there be differences in how this virtual charter school functions compared to other virtual charter schools such as EPIC and the Oklahoma Virtual Academy?
I mean, they had to write a whole different contract. Basically, they had to write in there, allow them to, not follow some laws if it violates their faith. And that's not what we've seen in the other schools' contracts. And they did discuss at the meeting how this then could become a template for future contract renewals and for new schools.
Aaron, why does OKPLAC feel virtual charter schools are state entities and not private entities?
That is a key question in this litigation. We believe the law says, and is very, very clear again, that charter schools, whether they're virtual or brick and mortar, are public schools and therefore must abide by the same rules that traditional public schools must abide by as they serve students.
Jennifer, if St. Isidore gets through these legal challenges, how will it be funded?
It's mostly state funding. All the virtual schools, they don't collect any property tax, so there is no local funding coming to those schools. They can get some federal funding for like low-income students or special education students, but otherwise it all comes from the state.
So it'll be the same as other virtual charter schools, right?
It looks like it, yeah.
Okay. Erin, are you concerned that this charter school will be taking money away from traditional public schools?
That is a very real concern. We already feel like public schools are under-resourced. There's so much more need that we are not meeting in our schools currently. So for taxpayers to be asked to fund a religious institution, it does draw money away from our public schools that are following the law and are constitutional.
And this is a little devil's advocate question for either of you. What's wrong with school choice?
There's nothing wrong with school choice. In fact, Oklahoma has a really robust school choice opportunity. Did you know that in Oklahoma we have more school choice options than all of our neighboring states, and we spend more as a state from public dollars on private school tuition again than all of those neighboring states combined by a multiple? And yet, parents in Oklahoma choose public school. 90%, more than 90% of our students attend public schools in Oklahoma. So school choice isn't bad. Parents should have the opportunity to make decisions about where their children might be educated, but the state is required to fund a system of public schools that doesn't discriminate, that's accessible to all, and that provides the resources to meet the needs of every learner. And that needs to be the focus.
Jennifer, would you like to follow?
Sure. School choice has been something much discussed. We certainly cover a lot of these statewide schools and charter schools, mainly with an accountability angle, and that's one thing that we have seen falls short a lot of the times. The law allows them certain exemptions, and we've seen, some of these schools take advantage of that or, misuse public dollars. And that's one thing that we at Oklahoma Watch really try to keep our eye on and report on is the misuse of public dollars. So that would be one concern of mine.
How does this entire situation set Oklahoma apart from other districts and other schools and states?
This would be the nation's first. We'd be the only state to be doing this.
Jennifer, are there any other religious organizations or churches in Oklahoma that have applied to start a school themselves?
Not that I'm aware of. I do think that charter school advocates and folks around the country are watching what happens in Oklahoma, because if this school is approved, it would open that door and other entities around the country would want to follow suit and also try to get public approval and a state charter. But yeah, this is new ground.
Let's talk a little bit about the board. Are there usually split votes?
Yeah, this board has been really interesting. I have been writing about it for several years. Of course, this board oversees all virtual schools. They had a very contentious contract renewal with Epic Charter Schools after the audit came out and found a lot of issues, and they were really under the spotlight trying to get Epic back in a place where they felt like they were accountable to taxpayers. And then shortly after that, they had some resignations in their board. Actually, it's a 5-member board by statute, and they had dropped down to just 2. And the statute requires 3 to approve anything, so they couldn't even meet. They couldn't even do business for a while. And then we had some more recent appointments, and that's who there are some now questions about whether some of those new members are even able to vote on St. Isidore.
Erin, why is this such a divisive issue among parents and the school system?
I'm not sure it really is divisive among parents. I actually think a majority of parents don't believe this school is constitutional or should exist. So I'm not sure there's a lot of division on the parent side. I think parents agree that Christian education or faith-based education certainly has a place in our society and in our communities. It's just not to be funded by the state. Taxpayers don't want to fund and are protected from funding religious activity. That's something that's guaranteed to us by law. So I'm not sure there's a lot of division amongst the public on this issue. I think that we have leaders who are making it appear that way.
Yeah, I mean, I read all the public comments that were submitted over the school. There was hundreds of pages, hundreds. Overwhelmingly, nearly all of them were in opposition to the school. And lots of religious leaders and Christians and churchgoers and Catholics weighed in and said, we don't want this school because of the way that they're going about, doing this. Robert Franklin, the chair, has said multiple times after his no votes on this, the Catholic Church could open this school. They could open it today. They could have opened it yesterday as a private school. They are fully able to do that. It's this contract with the state that is, what they're trying to break new ground on. And if it was, his point is, if it was about the school and serving these kids virtually, they could have done that already.
How long do you think it'll actually take for classes to begin?
Under the contract, it's able to begin next fall. But of course, if there was a court order or something putting a halt to that while litigation goes through, it could be years.
Erin, do you think the school will ever be a reality?
I don't think so. I think they're testing constitutionality, and I think they understand that there are some national implications. The folks that are backing this school, I think they see maybe an opportunity to create a different way of doing public school that is not the way we have traditionally viewed it by law. And I think either they're hoping to change the law or they're hoping to twist the way we understand it. So, but I don't see how there's any constitutional backing or legal backing for a court to side with the school.
Why do we, and this is for both of you, why do you think that St. Isidore chose this route instead of becoming a private school?
I mean, they've said it, publicly in meetings, and they've talked about this. I mean, it is the ability to collect state dollars in order to fund the school. And they've talked a little bit too about how not having those dollars would make it hard to compete with another virtual school that is state funded. So, say if students have the choice, which they do, between a free public virtual school and their school, which had to charge tuition, they're saying that wouldn't be a fair competition.
Erin, is there anything that you would like to add?
I mean, I'm not sure we're trying to set up schools to be competitive with one another, if that makes sense. So I think the view that we should have competitive entities in education means that some kids lose. And that's one of the reasons I think public school is so valuable. But I also would say that they're pursuing this method because they would like some additional funding and they see the national implications.
Is there anything that you would like to add or maybe kind of explain for the viewers of Oklahoma about this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think keeping an eye on this board, there's one thing that we hadn't talked about yet is that this board is dissolving. So following these, very, highly watched, highly controversial votes, the legislature last session voted to replace it with a whole different board, a larger board with more members that will oversee both virtual charters and some brick and mortar charters. And so that's also, kind of impacting how these board members are, coming and going. They're resigning. They're being placed on the board. All in the background is that this board will not even exist at this time next year.
Erin, any final thoughts?
The last thing I would say is just that let's not misunderstand religious freedom. The Catholic Church or any faith entity has the right to open a school, and Christian education has history. We know that they are good schools. But taxpayers and students have a right to not be indoctrinated at school or to fund religious activities with their hard-earned dollars. That's what we're standing to protect.
Thank you both for joining us. Jennifer Palmer with the Oklahoma Watch and Miss Erin Brewer with the Oklahoma Legislative Action Committee. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.